Back. We are now up to book 7 in the sermons of Peter. This is kind of a short book. I think it's just 12 chapters, so we'll go ahead and knock this one out pretty quick. And on the 4th day of our stay in Tyre, Peter went out about daybreak, and there met him not a few of the dwellers round about, with very many of the inhabitants of Tyre itself, who cried out and said, God, through you have mercy on us. God, through you heal us. And Peter stood in a high stone, that all might see him, and having greeted them in a godly manner, thus began. God, who created the heavens and the whole universe, does not lack occasion for the salvation of those who would be saved. Wherefore let no one, in seeming evils, rashly charge him with unkindness to men. For men do not know the issue of those things which happen to them, nay, suspect that the result will be evil, but God knows that they will turn out well. So is it with the case of Simon. He is a power of the left hand of God, and has authority to do harm to those who know not God, so that he has been able to involve you in diseases, but by these very diseases which have been permitted to come upon you by the good providence of God, you are seeking and finding him who is able to cure, having been compelled to submit to the will of God on the occasion of the cure of the body, and to think of believing, in order that in this way you may have your souls as well as your bodies in a healthy state. This is actually one of the things that I've encountered quite a bit, is that sometimes the easiest way for people to recognize that there is a God, a good God, is through the schemes and the torments of the other side, of the enemy. That the fact that if you're casting demons out of somebody, you know that there's someone behind that name that you use to cast the demons out of them. And I think it's kind of funny to me, it's interesting to me that Peter is essentially stating the same thing, that it is through the wickedness that Simon did that is causing people to turn and look for the good God to help them. So even though the adversary is against us, and again, I've said he's our adversary, not necessarily God's adversary, from what I can tell. Sometimes the adversary, it drives you to look for the Creator, or to seek out the good Prince, Yeshua. Now, I have been told that after he has sacrificed an ox, he feasted you in the middle of the forum, and that you, being carried away with much wine, made friends with not only the evil demons, but their prince also, and that in this way the most of you were seized by these sicknesses, unwittingly drawing upon yourselves with your own hands the sword of destruction. So in other words, they're their own worst enemy. For the demons would have had no power over you, had not you first supped with their prince. For thus from the beginning was a law laid by God the Creator of all things on each of the two princes, him of the right hand and him on the left, that neither should have power over anyone whom they might wish to benefit or to hurt, unless first he is set down at the same table with them. So, as we go on and we get more details, this sacrifice of an animal and eating dead flesh, this gives power over you to the adversary. Likewise, how is it that you enter into covenant with the good prince, Yeshua? It is through the Eucharist, through the bread and wine. So the let's read this again. So like Satan gets power over you through eating of dead flesh, among other things. There's other ways, fornication, that sort of thing. So various sins, but specifically Peter's talking about eating, and in this case the people were eating dead flesh. neither prince, either Yeshua or Satan, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, should have power over anyone whom they might wish to benefit or to hurt, unless first he is set down at the same table with them. So think about that. And then, when you partook of meat sacrificed to idols, what were the 4 purity commands that James gave to the Gentiles that were converting, in the process of converting? Don't eat meat sacrificed to idols, don't eat things strangled, abstain from blood, and fornication. See, this is the purpose. This is the reason why James specified those 4 things. Those are the 4 ways in which you're most likely to submit yourself to the evil demons. When you partook of meat sacrificed to idols, you became servants of the prince of evil, and in like manner if you cease from these things and flee for refuge to God through the good prince of his right hand, honoring him without sacrifices, and by doing whatsoever he wills, know of a truth that not only will your bodies be healed, but also your souls become healthy. For he only, destroying with his left hand, can quicken with his right. He only can both smite and raise the fallen. So why did Yeshua teach his followers not to eat meat? According to pretty much every historical record we have that speaks about the Ebionites, that speaks about the apostles, they all say that they would not eat meat. So why? Because of this. Because if you're not partaking in the sacrifices, you are protected from the enemy. But when you start eating meat, when you start eating dead flesh, you're opening yourselves up. And you could say, well, I mean, if we buy meat from the meat market, I mean, it's not been sacrificed to an idol. Yeah, but it's still been sacrificed. It's been sacrificed. And if anything, it's been sacrificed to the almighty dollar, the biggest occultic idol in the world right now. Wherefore, as then you were deceived by the forerunner Simon, and so became dead in your souls to God, and were smitten in your bodies, so now if you repent, as I said, and submit to those things which are well-pleasing to God, you will get new strength in your bodies and recover your soul's health. And the things which are well-pleasing to God are these: to pray to him, to ask from him, recognizing that he is the giver of all things and gives with discriminating law, to abstain from the table of devils, not to taste dead flesh. Not to taste dead flesh. It doesn't say it doesn't necessarily matter if it's been sacrificed to an idol or not. You don't eat dead flesh at all. Not to touch blood. So here's the thing, like people will say, oh, well, I drained all the blood out of the meat. You don't get all the blood out of it. The passage in Genesis where Yahweh was saying, don't eat blood, I think it's Genesis 6, speaking to Noah, he's drawing a difference between the 2 types of blood. There's a mistranslation there. It says you can eat everything that lives. What it actually says is you can eat the creeping creature, which is the cold-blooded animals, the snakes and the lizards and the insects and things like that. That's what he's allowing, if we believe that passage. Like I think it was a later addition, but if we believe that passage to be genuine, and if we take it at face value, what he's saying to Noah is this: because there's an emergency situation, the world has been destroyed by this flood, and you're in a survival situation, you may eat of the cold-blooded animals, the creeping things. However, do not eat flesh that has blood. In other words, according to the understanding of the author of Genesis, cold-blooded animals don't have blood. They, I guess, regard it as a different substance. The only thing considered blood in the Bible, in the biblical understanding, is warm-blooded animals. So he says, flesh that has blood you shall not eat. And then he says I will require any man's life who slays an animal. In other words, you will be punished for slaying a warm-blooded animal. Those are the ones you're not to eat. Now, I would have to be pretty daggum hungry to want to eat a snake or a turtle or something like that. Of course, I'm not from Louisiana, so that may have something to do with it. But that's the only thing that Noah is given permission to eat. He is not told you can eat everything that moves, or these crazy translations that people have come up with to justify eating meat. So, where it says not to touch blood, again, this sounds a whole lot like James's commands, right? His starter purity laws. You can't get all the blood out of the meat. So, this is not saying drain the blood. He's saying don't mess with the blood. Don't slay animals. Don't slit their throats and drain the blood out of them. You're touching blood. Don't touch blood. When you deal with occultic rituals, occultic sacrifice, it involves blood manipulation. They'll drain the blood out into a cup. They'll drink the blood. And he's saying don't touch it. That you're not to participate in this blood manipulation, and that includes draining it out of an animal. God put the blood in the animals. Satan is the one who wants it spilled on the ground. Don't slay animals. Be washed from all pollution. And in the rest, in one word, as the God-fearing Judeans have heard, do you also hear, and be of one mind in many bodies. Let each man be minded to do to his neighbor those good things he wishes for himself. Okay, so here's the desire of God. Okay, let's go ahead and review this one more time. This is important. The things that are well-pleasing to God are these: to pray to Him, check. To ask from Him, check. You can check these things off. Are you doing these things? Recognizing He's a giver of all things and gives with discriminating law, check. To abstain from the table of devils. And now most Christians, this is where he loses you. Abstain from the table of devils, but we like the table of devils. I mean, don't you know how much we enjoy our Sunday barbecues and leaving church and going and eating a bunch of ribs? Okay, well, if you're not going to abstain from the devil's table, why are you going to church? Just go ahead and be some pagan heathen and leave God out of it. Not to taste dead flesh. Oh, that's hate speech. Not to touch blood. Not to be washed from all pollution. This is baptism, I think, by the way. Be washed from all pollution, be baptized. And in the early church, in the Ebionites and the Nazarenes, there was baptism worked in two different ways. Initially, you would have a baptism that was like an initiation into the church, just like we do today. Your baptism is part of your conversion. And so you have a ritualistic public baptism with the congregation. You're baptized by the bishop or the priest or whoever, the pastor, just like we do today. And that's where you're born from above. It's a mistranslation to say born again. You're being born from above. You're essentially being born into the family of God in heaven. So you're born from above at your first baptism. Then, on a daily basis, you wash yourself, and again, that is part of their belief. So you take a shower, that's fine. Like in the Nazarene Acts, you hear a lot of mentions of Peter and Clement and the followers going down to the seashore to bathe in the sea. That was what they would do on a daily basis. So you'd be rebaptized every day. The first baptism was like the initiation type ceremony, but then there was a continual baptism where you're basically like maintaining your purity washing away the filth of the world. You hear Peter talking at times about the way the world is corrupted, that even the air itself is corrupted by the what? By the cooking of dead flesh. And so you're washing all that stuff that you pick up throughout the day through the baptism. Like that's something they would do every day. And then finally, let each man be minded to do to his neighbor those things which he wishes for himself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And you may all find out what is good by holding some such conversation as the following with yourselves. You would not like to be murdered, do not murder another man. You would not like for your wife to be seduced by another, do not commit adultery. You would not like for any of your things to be stolen from you, steal nothing from another. And so understanding by yourselves what is reasonable and doing it, you will become dear to God, and will obtain hearing. Otherwise, in this life, which is now is your bodies, will be tormented, and in that which is to come, your souls will be punished. So, the golden rule can lead you through how to love your neighbor. You don't do to others what you don't want done to yourself. And Peter, having spent a few days teaching them in this way and healing them, they were baptized, and after that all sat down together in the marketplaces in sackcloth and ashes, grieving because of his other wondrous works, and repenting of their former sins. And when they of Simon heard it, they did likewise, and sent to beseech Peter, since they could not come themselves for their diseases. And Peter did not spend many days in Tyre, but when he had instructed all its inhabitants and freed them from all manners of diseases, and had founded a church, and set over it as bishop one of the elders who was with him, he departed for Sidon. But when Simon heard that Peter was coming, he straightway fled to Beirut with Appion and his friends. And as Peter entered Sidon, they brought many in couches and laid them before him. And he said to them, Think not that I pray you that I can do anything to heal you, who am a mortal man, myself subject to many evils, but I shall not refuse to show you the way in which you may be saved. For I have learned from the prophet of truth the conditions foreordained of God before the foundation of the world, that is to say, the evil deeds which if men do, he has ordained that they shall be injured by the prince of evil, and in like manner the good deeds for which he has decreed that those who have believed in him as their physician shall have their bodies made whole, and their souls established in safety. Knowing then these good and evil deeds, I make known to you, as it were, two paths, and I shall show you by which travelers are lost, and by which they are saved, being guided by God. The path of the lost, then, is broad and very smooth. It ruins them without troubling them, but the path of the saved is narrow and rugged, and in the end it saves those who have journeyed through it, but not without much toil. So this, again, I think this is almost downplayed in a way in the church, the whole words of Yeshua where he says, narrow is the gate that leads to salvation, and there are few that find it, but broad is the way that leads to destruction. And there are many who find it. So if you're walking a path, and there are literally billions of people walking that same path, then it should tell you that you're on the wrong path. Now look, it is possible you could be walking down a path with very few people on it and still be on the wrong path. So I'm not saying just because you're the only person walking the path means you're on the right one. But what I am saying is you can definitely know you're not on the right path if you are going along with a huge mass of people, a third or a half of the population of the earth. Those people are not walking down a smooth path. They're not walking down this rugged path full of tribulation. So what you want to do is you want to go back and examine the very earliest doctrines of Jesus. He said that his words will never pass away. Till heaven and earth pass away, his words will not pass away. So if you're believing another that came after him, namely Paul of Tarsus, who taught a different path. Paul taught the broad path. So if you're following Paul, you're on the broad path. He taught things contrary to what Jesus taught. You want to get to the truth, you want to get to the small path, the narrow path, go back to the original apostles whom Jesus chose. Jesus chose Peter. And you can see, like Peter, when you read the words of Peter, he is emphasizing works. He's emphasizing your conduct and what you do and decisions that you make. He's not talking about saying a sinner's prayer. He's not talking about believing biographical data about Jesus to be saved. He's talking about your works. You'll be judged by your works. And you go back to the Gospels, and guess what? Jesus says you will be judged according to your works. So Peter is giving you the same gospel that Jesus did. Paul gives you a different gospel. He says you're not saved by works. So who are you going to believe? Like, there's a test going on right now. You're in a test. And you've got Jesus standing here saying you're going to be judged by works. If you want to be saved, do good works. And then you got, Peter standing there next to Jesus saying, here are the good works. Here's how you choose the good works. These are how you define the good works. This is what my master Jesus taught me. This is how you do the good works. And then next to them, you've got Paul, who says, no, man, forget the works. Just believe some biographical data about Jesus and you'll be saved. And you're in a test, and you don't even realize you're in a test. Who are you going to believe? Jesus says that you don't eat meat sacrificed to idols. It's a doctrine of Balaam. You got Peter standing here saying, don't eat meat sacrificed to idols. Don't eat meat at all. Don't eat it at all. James saying, don't eat it at all. Avoid it. And then you got Paul saying, eat whatever's set before you. An idol's nothing. It can't hurt you. You can go into an idol's temple. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, or maybe it's chapter 8, in chapters 8 and 10, Paul tells you, eat whatever's set before you. You can eat meat sacrificed to idols. It can't hurt you. Don't worry about it. You can go into an idol's temple and sit there at the table, the literal table of devils that they make the sacrifices to, and the priest of the idol sitting there beside you eating and serving you meat, and you can do that, and it won't affect you at all. 1 Corinthians chapters 8 and 10. Read them. He tells you in there, you can go into the temple itself, the idol's temple, and eat the meat sacrificed to an idol. Who are you going to believe? Can you not see how obvious it is? Paul taught things contrary to Jesus. You can't rectify that. You can't rectify it. Jesus telling you that it's a doctrine of Balaam in Revelation chapter 2. He says it twice. Eating meat sacrificed to idols is a stumbling block. Peter tells you this is how you get infested with demons. Peter's like, don't eat meat sacrificed to an idol, you'll get a demon. And in 1 Corinthians, Paul's saying, hogwash. Go ahead and eat the meat sacrificed to idols. Go into the idol's temple itself and eat it. It ain't going to hurt you. And guess what? In 2 Corinthians, chapter 12, long about verse 7, Paul says, oh man, I've got this in my flesh. I have a demon, an angel of Satan dwelling in my flesh, tormenting me. How do you think he got the angel of Satan in his flesh tormenting him? 1 Corinthians, he says, eat meat sacrificed to idols. 2 Corinthians, he's got a demon. Can you put two and two together, cause and effect? And then Paul says, I begged my Jesus 3 times to drive this demon out of me, and he said no. He said, my grace is good enough for you. Forget about the demon. You're just going to have to suffer with it. Now, when did Jesus in the Gospels ever refuse to cast out a demon? He's refusing to cast demons out of Paul. In fact, Jesus said he gave his apostles authority over demons. If Paul was a genuine apostle, he should have had authority to cast that demon out himself, but he obviously did not. And you know what else Jesus said? Jesus in the Gospel said that Satan refuses to cast out demons. Paul's Jesus refused to cast out demons. So who was Paul's Jesus? I just laid out the I laid out the dots there in order, man. Put two and two together, you'll figure it out. Paul wasn't following the Jesus of the Gospels. He was following someone else. Anyway, so the two paths. The two paths were essential to the early church. In the Didache, go read the Didache. It starts off, there are two paths. The very first words of it. It is the first teaching that you get if you were a convert to Nazarene, Ebionite, Christianity. First thing you were taught is the two paths. The path of the lost, then, is broad and smooth. It ruins them without troubling them, but the path of the saved is narrow, rugged. In the end, it saves those who journey through it, but not without much toil. And these two paths are presided over by unbelief and faith. And these journey through the path of unbelief those who have preferred pleasure, on account of which they have forgotten the day of the judgment, doing that which is not pleasing to God, and not caring to save their souls by the word, and have anxiously sought their own good. And have not anxiously sought their own good. Truly, they know not that the counsels of God are not like men's counsels. For in the first place, he knows the thoughts of all men, and all must give an account not only of their actions, but also of their thoughts. And their sin is much less who strive to understand well and fail than those who do not even strive at all after good things. So this is what I've been saying. Grace comes to you when you try. If you try and you fail, you stumble, that's when you get grace. Their sin is much less who strive to understand, and we could say strive to do well, and fail, than those who do not at all strive after good things. So if you don't even try, you're not getting grace. Like that's the way it works. Because it has pleased God that he who errs in his knowledge of good, as men count errors, should be saved after being slightly punished. But this is what you call grace. This is where grace comes in. You're slightly punished because you made an honest mistake, not because you outright rejected God and his commandments completely. But they who have taken no care at all to know the better way, even though they may have done countless other good deeds, if they have not stood in the service he has himself appointed, come under the charge of indifference, and are severely punished and utterly destroyed. So, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not the things which I say? What did Yeshua say? He said, I'm going to tell you guys, get out of here. I don't even know you. This is Peter just expounding upon what Jesus said. If you don't do the things I say, I don't know you. You want to be a follower of Jesus, you actually follow him. You do what he does. And this is the service he has appointed, to worship him only, to trust only the prophet of truth, only in the prophet of truth, to be baptized for the remission of sins, and thus by this pure baptism to be born from above by God by saving water, to abstain from the table of devils, that is, from food offered to idols, from dead relics, from animals which have been suffocated or caught by wild beasts, and from blood. You can't do this if you're eating meat. You don't eat meat at all. You can't abstain from blood if you're eating meat with blood in it. Not to live any longer impurely, to wash after intercourse, that the woman on their part should keep the law of purification, that all should be sober-minded, given to good works, refraining from wrongdoing, looking for eternal life from the all-powerful God, and asking with prayer and continuous supplication that they may win it. Such was Peter's counsel to the men of Sidon also. And in a few days many repented and believed and were healed. And Peter, having founded a church and set over it as bishop one of the elders who were with him, left Sidon. No sooner had he reached Beirut than an earthquake took place, and the multitude running to Peter said, "Help us, for we are afraid we shall utterly perish." Then Simon ventured along with Apion and Anuban and Athenodorus and the rest of his companions to cry out to the people against Peter in public, saying, "Flee, friends, from this man. He's a magician. Trust us. He it was who caused his earthquake, and he sent us these diseases to terrify us as if he were God himself." And many such false charges did Simon and his friends bring against Peter as one who could do things above human power. But as soon as the people gave him a moment's quiet, Peter, with a surprising boldness, gave a little laugh and said, "Friends, I admit that I can do, God willing, what these men say, and more than that. And I am ready, if you do not believe what I say, to overturn your city from top to bottom." And the people were afraid and promised to do whatever he should command. "Let none of you then," said Peter, "either hold conversation with these sorcerers or have anything to do with them." And as soon as the people heard this concise command, they took up sticks and pursued them till they had driven them wholly out of the town. And they who were sick and possessed with devils came and cast themselves at Peter's feet. And he, seeing this, and anxious to free them from their terror, said to them, "Were I able to cause earthquakes and do all that I wish, I assure you I would not destroy Simon and his friends, because I'm not sent to destroy men, but would make him my comrade, that he might no longer by his slanders against my preaching the truth hinder the salvation of many. But if you believe me, he himself is a magician, he is a slanderer, he's a minister of evil to those who know not the truth. Therefore he has power to bring diseases on sinners, having the sinners themselves to help him in his power over them. But I'm a servant of God, the creator of all things, and a disciple of his prophet who is at his right hand. Wherefore I, being his apostle, preach the truth, to serve as a good man, I drive away diseases. For I am his second messenger, since first the disease comes, but after that the healing. By that evil-working magician, then, you were stricken with disease, because you revolted from God. By me, if you believe on him, you shall be cured, and so having had experience that he is able, you may turn to good works and have your souls saved." As he said these things, all fell on their knees before his feet, and he, lifting up his hands to heaven, prayed to God, and he healed them by his simple prayer alone. And he remained not many days in Beirut, but after he had accustomed many to the service of one God, and had baptized them, and had set over them a bishop from the elders who were with him, he went to Biblios. And when he came there, he learned that Simon had not waited for them for a day, but had gone straightway to Trypholis. He remained there only a few days, and after that he healed not a few, and trained them in the Scriptures. He followed in Simon's track to Trypholis, preferring to pursue him rather than to flee from him. So that brings us up to Book 8. I said that Book 7 was short and it'd be quick, but had a lot to discuss there, so I guess I spoke too soon. Alright, thanks for listening. We'll pick it up in Book 8 next time. Shalom.